a village where beauty was once measured by strength and soul, a young woman drinks from the cup of temptation, seeking to shrink her body, only to find her spirit unraveling. What begins as a quest for acceptance spirals into a battle between ancestral wisdom and modern illusions. Will she vanish, or will she rise from the fire and reclaim her truth? Before we continue, do well to subscribe to this channel for more interesting story, like and share. In the heart of Umidag village, nestled between lush hills and vibrant markets, lived a young woman named Amina. She was known for her warmth, laughter, and radiant skin. Yet, in a world where beauty was being reshaped by modern ideals, Amina felt trapped in her own reflection. At the town square, whispers buzzed like flies. Have you seen Kechi lately? She's lost so much weight. Like those girls in the city. Amina is beautiful, but she's quite thick, don't you think? These comments, though faint, pierced Amina's self-esteem. The mirror in her small mud brick home no longer reflected pride, it echoed inadequacy. One evening, as twilight danced over the village, Amina overheard a conversation between two girls by the river. It's called the bitter slimming leaf, said one. A herbal blend brought from the far eastern hills. You lose weight without lifting a finger. Does it work? Asked the other. They say it works like juju. 1 week and you look like those Lagos Instagram girls. The mention of magic stirred something dangerous in Amina. Though her grandmother, Mama Yugo, warned of shortcuts, Amina was already dreaming of a new body, a new identity. Against her better judgment, Amina traveled to the edge of the village where the elders warned no one should go without a reason, the midnight market. There, cloaked vendors sold rare herbs, trinkets, and potions under moonlight. A man with eyes like coal and a crooked grin offered her a small, dark pouch. Boil it. Drink it for 7 nights, he said. You become what men desire, but not without cost. Ignoring the final warning, Amina paid with the last of her savings. Pride and desperation outweighed caution. The first night, Amina boiled the leaves. The bitter steam burned her nose, but she drank every drop. By morning, her stomach shrunk. On the 3rd day, her calves softened. On the 7th, she wore her old dress, 2 sizes too small, now loose around her waist. People noticed. Amina, you look amazing. What gym did you go to? She smiled, basking in praise, but something felt wrong. She couldn't sleep. Her hair thinned. Her dreams were filled with shadows whispering her name. Mama Yugo returned from her pilgrimage to the hills. Upon seeing Amina, her face fell. Child, what have you done? Amina confessed everything. Mama Yugo took one look at the pouch and gasped. This is not of this world. These herbs are used by spirit workers. They take beauty, yes, but they take more. That night, Amina collapsed, her body racked with pain. The spirits came in her dreams, demanding payment. You wanted to be smaller, they hissed. Now you will disappear. Desperate to save her, Mama Yugo summoned the elders. They built a cleansing fire at the village square and sang ancient songs. Amina, now barely able to walk, was brought before them. They performed a cleansing ritual, burning the remaining herbs and calling on the ancestors to sever her ties to the spirit realm. As flames roared and drums beat, Amina screamed, and then, silence. She woke up days later, weak but alive. The spirits were gone. Her body had returned to its natural state, strong and full. Amina never again sought shortcuts. She began walking the forest paths each morning, eating well, honoring her roots. She spoke to young girls about self-love and the danger of hidden cost. The mirror now reflected a woman not ashamed of her shape, but proud of her strength. What they took, she would say, almost took me with it. But I came back, with wisdom. After her recovery, Amina spent many hours sitting under the Iroko tree, listening to the wind. It was said that the spirits of ancestors traveled on its currents, whispering wisdom to those who had suffered and survived. One evening, an old woman named Yijide, who had once been a healer but had gone silent after losing her only daughter to a city surgeon's botched beauty operation, approached Amina. "You walked through fire, child," Yijide said. "Now you must use your voice." Amina, once quiet and self-conscious, began to speak. Amina formed a group called the Circle of Daughters. Young women gathered under the moonlight every market week to share stories, truths, and fears. Some admitted to taking pills smuggled in from foreign countries. Others starved themselves, drank salt water, or bound their stomachs with tight wrappers. Together, they wept. Together, they healed. The village elders, initially skeptical, began to support the movement, impressed by how the girls' confidence blossomed. Even the men began to notice the difference. Months later, Mama Yugo presented Amina with a new mirror, this time carved by the village's most talented artisan. Around the frame were images, a flame, an iroko tree, an open eye, and a curvy woman with outstretched arms. "This mirror doesn't lie," Mama Yugo said. "It reflects your journey, not just your face." When Amina looked into it, she smiled, not because she was thinner or more beautiful, but because she saw a woman who had faced darkness and chosen light. News of Amina's group spread beyond Yumidike. A journalist from the city came to document the story for a program called Voices of the Forgotten. Cameras rolled as Amina spoke beneath the iroko tree. "They wanted us to be small, quiet, invisible. But we have chosen to be loud, to take up space, to live fully." Her words echoed across villages, and soon, women from far and wide sent messages, asking to learn, to visit, to join. To celebrate their transformation, the villagers declared a new tradition, the Festival of the True Body. Instead of beauty contests, the event featured storytelling, dancing in traditional dress, displays of strength, endurance, and wisdom. Songs sung by mothers and daughters together. At the center stood Amina, now honored as the flame bearer, the one who survived the fire and chose to carry the light forward. Years had passed. The village of Yumidike was no longer isolated. A paved road now cut through its center, bringing buses, mobile towers, and streaming videos from around the world. Amina's granddaughter, Ijeoma, now a teenager, was part of a generation caught between two worlds, rooted in heritage, yet constantly drawn to the shine of the digital age. Social media fed her images of women sculpted by filters and surgery. One day, she came home silent, tears in her eyes. "Nana," she whispered, "I don't look like them. They say I'm too dark. My hips are too wide." Amina's heart ached. She had hoped her fight would spare Ijeoma from this pain. Amina took Ijeoma back to the same river where, years ago, she had first heard of the bitter slimming leaf. She pointed to the smooth stones and bent trees. "This river watched me make a mistake. It also watched me survive." They sat for hours. Amina told her the unfiltered version of her story, of how close she had come to fading into nothing. "Your body is not a trend," she said. "It is a memory of our mothers, our grandmothers, the women who carried firewood, danced in moonlight, and bled life into the world." Ijeoma listened. Slowly, the shame in her eyes turned to something deeper, recognition. Temptation returned again weeks later when a vendor set up shop in the market, selling imported slimming teas and injections. Girls whispered. Some vanished for weeks and returned with foreign accents and tight waist. One evening, Ijeoma was approached by a classmate holding a vial. "Try this. It's not like your grandmother's story. This is science. Safe. Fast." Ijeoma took the bottle but didn't drink it. Instead, she stood before the circle of daughters, now grown into a network across 5 villages, and held up the vial. The tools change, but the trap stays the same. The crowd fell silent. That day, she gave her first speech. And like her grandmother before her, her voice echoed. To preserve the journey of their lineage, Amina and Ijeoma worked together to compile a book, handwritten, illustrated with charcoal sketches, palm front paper, and passed from hand to hand. They called it The Book of Fire and Flesh, Stories Our Bodies Remember. It held tales of survival, herbal wisdom with warnings, poems written by daughters, songs once banned for being too native. It became not just a book, but a map, the way back to the self. On her final day, Amina sat beneath the Iroko tree, where everything began. Ijeoma, now a young woman with fire in her eyes, sat beside her. I thought I had to erase myself to be seen, Amina whispered. But I learned, the more of myself I kept, the more I became. She took Ijeoma's hand, placed a carved amulet into her palm, a symbol of wholeness. And then, with a smile on her lips, she closed her eyes. The world had changed faster than even Ijeoma could have imagined. After Amina's passing, Ijeoma took over leadership of the Circle of Daughters, but the challenges were now different. Influencers with millions of followers were advertising body-altering surgeries as self-care. Deepfake beauty filters made girls feel like they could never be beautiful without technology. Medical tourism promised transformation with the click of a button and a credit card. The whispers that once came by Riverside were now screams in Ijeoma's phone. For the first time, she felt her grandmother's teachings begin to bend under the weight of a new world. Will our stories still matter in an era of screens, she wondered. A scandal struck. One of Ijeoma's closest friends and a rising leader in the circle, Zainab, secretly flew to Turkey for cosmetic surgery. She returned looking like a stranger and lied about it publicly. When the truth came out, the circle split. Half felt betrayed. The other half sympathized. She was only doing what the world told her was necessary. Why must we suffer to stay natural when others are rewarded for changing? Ijeoma was torn. The principles felt sacred, but so did her love for Zainab. In her confusion, Ijeoma turned to the remaining village elders. Among them was Elder Nidi, a once quiet seamstress who had seen 4 generations come and go. Elder Nidi said, "Your grandmother burned the leaf, yes. But not the story. If fire purifies, it can also reforge. Do not fear change. Fear forgetting." It was then Ijeoma realized Amina's story was not a cage, it was a foundation. The circle didn't need to be preserved in stone. It needed to evolve. Months later, Ijeoma relaunched the movement, not as the Circle of Daughters, but as the Flame Keepers. No longer only about rejection of modern pressures, it now became a platform for balance. Welcoming women who chose natural paths and medical ones, as long as they understood the roots. Teaching informed choice, not blind rejection or blind obedience. Combining ancestral wisdom with science, not against it. Zainab returned, not as a pariah, but as a teacher. "I changed my body," she said. But the mistake was lying. Shame breeds in silence. Together, they lit a ceremonial flame in front of the Iroko tree. Soon, Ijeoma's words reached international ears. Invitations came from Nairobi, Johannesburg, even London. She spoke in forums on identity, body image, and cultural autonomy. "We are not against progress," she told a packed auditorium in Accra. "We are against forgetting who we were before we were told we weren't enough." She carried with her a digital version of the Book of Fire and Flesh, now translated into 7 languages. Girls read it from tablets in classrooms, libraries, even refugee camps. Years passed again. Ijeoma, now older, walked to the same river with her own daughter, Aminatu, named in memory of her grandmother. "What's this place?" Aminatu asked. "Where a girl once almost disappeared, and where she learned to rise instead." They knelt by the water. The wind carried soft echoes through the trees. "Will the world ever stop trying to shrink us?" the young girl asked. Ijeoma smiled. "Maybe not. but we will keep growing anyway. And the river, as always, kept flowing, eternal, like the story itself. The moral of this story: true beauty begins with self-acceptance. When we honor our roots and speak our truth, we break cycles of shame and reclaim our power. What part of yourself have you been told to shrink? And what would it look like to reclaim it with pride? Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and share. Stay tuned for more interesting story.